Hello, and this is my VS.NET Semester 1 project. The project is based on creating a game of chess, and currently at this state, any person can play very simple game of chess using this program. Completely functional. The only limits that it has are that you can't actually drag and drop pieces to where you want them to go. So the couple of things that I want to show you, that I want to recognize on this main formatting form are basically just more or less four or five things. So first you have this chessboard made completely out of panels, and all of these panels are labeled with their appropriate coordinates according to the numbers and letters listed, which I'll show up here. Then you're gonna have all of the pieces that the game plays with, which are actually just labels. These are what will be moving and what will be referenced in the actual code itself. Here you have a group box. This is where all the pieces that were previously taken or captured are displayed. This round timer is not actually doing anything because the movement method was changed from dragging and dropping to using this text-based movement. Here, these two group boxes are where all of the gameplay actually happens, you could say. Here I have a text box for moving pieces, and text box for the destination, and then a button to move the piece. Here you're going to have text box for the piece that was captured, and that actually removes the piece from the board. So now I just got a quick preview of the game itself to show you how it works. So say you're starting the game, common starting move would be this pawn to this base, so you'd go lower pawn 4, or lower pawn 5, to e4. Click to move piece, and it moves the piece. So it's that simple. This works with any piece. I'll show you, for example, upper left bishop, and we'll move that to, let's move that to d6. And yes, I'm recognizing that it's not an official move that a bishop could make, not only because there's pawns in front of it, because that's not actually the movement pattern of a bishop, but that is one of the problems / struggles that I've been having with this project, is that I can't, with my current knowledge of programming, set parameters for what pieces are available to be moved and where they are available to be moved. So that's simply one thing that will have to be improved with time. But for now, this is the current state of the project. And looking back here in the code, you'll see all of this is happening in the button click event down here at the very bottom. And the way this is working is, starting here, first thing that'll happen is you will set the destination. This is just declaring and initializing a variable called destination, which will be used later when telling the piece where to move. So that's first initialized to A1. That's completely arbitrary. It can be B2. It doesn't really matter. It's just a value to initialize the variable, so that it's accessible throughout all of the if statements. Then you'll have the string variable selected piece, and that will be taken from text box 1, which is right here. From there, we're just going to figure out what the destination really is instead of just A1 by doing text box 2 dot equals, and then you will check what it equals throughout all of these 64 if statements that are going to trail down here. And say the user does want the destination to be A8, and then it'll detect that, and it'll say, okay, destination equals A8. Then after all of this, scroll wheel, now we're going to select what piece is the selected piece. So it'll go if selected piece dot equals lower pawn 1 dot parent equals destination. And that's basically the brunt of this program. That's what it's all running off of. First, you're going to see selected piece. That's the string variable that we initialized way up there with text box 1 dot text. and then we're going to check what piece is in it, what piece was typed in. So say lower pawn 1 was typed in. The program will say, okay, they typed in lower pawn 1. So now we'll change its parents property and set that equal to destination, which will move the piece you want to move to the proper destination. So now it's moved the piece, and it'll just reset the text boxes so you don't have to, the user doesn't have to constantly delete. That's just a simple functionality feature. That's always nice to have. And then to demonstrate another function in the program, say lower pawn had moved up and then also taken and captured upper left bishop. So we can go upper left bishop, and it will remove that piece, placing it in the captured pieces group box. Now say lower pawn 5 was also taken or captured. Lower pawn 5, remove piece. Notice that they are layered one on top of another. That's just something that I will have to work with to displace, because I'll have to, when it's put into this group box, displace it with an X or Y coordinate to move it either to the side or down. That way they don't all appear one on top of each other. But for now, the user can still drag them all around, place them in rows, organize them however they want. So that is how this program is actually going to work. Now, taking a look at one of the key concepts utilized in this project, you're going to see this dot parent, and that'll appear, as you can see, almost everywhere. Like, it shows up quite often. And what this dot parent property will do is down, not in there. But the dot parent property is that's what's telling the label where it belongs. So on the actual formatting form, looking at lower pawn 1, this lower pawn 1 will have a dot parent property corresponding to panel A2, because that's the panel that it is currently sitting in. From here, all of these pieces have their own dot parent properties according to wherever they are. So lower pawn 2 might have B2, pawn 8 might have H7, and that'll differ as the program goes on, because each time, whatever you're typing in here, that is essentially what the new dot parent property of that label is going to be. So now we can take a look at basically what this project started out as. I have multiple forms on this, test movement and form 1. Basically, form 1 was my very initial plan of, let's patch in a picture box with a picture of a chessboard on it, and then put label group box onto it, which will basically do what this chessboard would have done. This didn't work just because it was somewhat hard to juggle all of that, and I felt like custom creating a chessboard out of its own panels would, in the end, look a lot more polished as it does, and eliminate some of the funky things that just would have really stopped this from working. And this also initially started out as a movement system. And what this movement system would do is, as shown in the group box when something is captured, or just anywhere in here, I wanted to allow the user to be able to drag any piece and drop it into its corresponding panel. The reason this doesn't work is its dot parent property, which is what I showed earlier. If this pawn 4 belongs to the coordinate D7, that means its parent property is panel D7, which means it will not be able to show up in any other panels than just D7, which is very limiting for the method I want to use. The solution to this problem would be to let the program change the dot parent property depending on where you release that piece. So yeah, now it's dragged somewhere in that abyss. So yeah, that's not coming out, and that's another downfall of this program. If you drag and drop a piece anywhere other than where it should be, you can't access it from beneath that panel. So now it's just sort of gone. And the way this works is all of this code right here, that's all setting how a piece moves. And also, if you look at the first form, it has this timer and the reset button. The reset button is button 1 dot click, and basically that is what toggles which player would be able to move the pieces if the movement system worked with the dot parents properties. So form load, I'll just walk you through all the code that has been commented out because it's not functional. Form load, you're going to set all of the pieces to disabled, meaning they can't be dragged. That way nothing can be altered to start. Now you'll have all of my movement code, which lets all the pieces move and establishes these events that are shown here. I was using the mouse down event and the mouse move event. And after all of this, you're going to see button 1 dot click. This enables the timer, which starts the countdown timer for the turn, starting at 2 minutes, and increments the turn count plus 1. And then if turn count equals 1, it'll set the starting side to active. And what this does is, since all the pieces are initially inactive, it'll let only one player move their pieces, which just simulates a turn. Next time the reset button is clicked, it increments the turn again, and it sets the opposing side to active and deactivates the previously active side. This allows for each player to take turns moving their pieces. So after it disables the next turn and it simulates it, now you're gonna see just that'll happen on its own as the user clicks the button. But now the timer is basically what's running all of this code. That's what's controlling how long each turn takes, and when the pieces are going to be deactivated or activated if the time runs out. So here you just have all the incrementation to let the timer work, and that's the code for it. And then you'll have this big if statement. And what this if statement does is it will check at every timer take whether or not the timer equals 0. If the timer does equal 0, you're going to see that everything is inactivated. Basically, it doesn't actually make everything enabled false. It just checks which side is currently enabled and disables the other side. So, say example here, if the upper king is disactivated, which means it's the lower side's turn, it'll inactivate all of the lower pieces, and vice versa for the other side. However, this was all commented out simply because it doesn't work with the current movement mechanism being text-based. So, also you might have seen that there are a couple different forms in my project. You're gonna have final form, form 1, and test movement form. Form 1 was where all of the initial programming happened, all of the weird stuff, sort of mishaps with the code, and just code that didn't work to move stuff. But however, here's where you're going to see some of the links and resources I used to learn about the movement code, and again, find the final working code. Test movement form. This is the movement I used, just using 2 panels and 2 labels to test whether or not you could drag and drop. This is sort of what cemented my fears about not being able to drag from one panel to another. So this actually uses the working code. That's where I figured out what to actually put, making alterations actually to the code simply to make it work with my labels. And this is where I tested all of that out. And here is where actually I came across the dot parent property of the labels, which that's what let me move the pieces in my current program state. So yeah, that is the end of my independent project. It will continue to be revised. I'm going to try to look farther into farther detail about whether or not I can change the dot parent property while dragging a piece.